Welcome to the Having It All podcast, the show about what it takes to live an abundant, loving life. My name is Matthew Bivens, and each week I'm helping you get out of your head so that you can truly have it all. Let's do it. What's going on? Matthew Bivens here, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Having It All podcast. Today I'm pumped. I'm excited, a little bit, not nervous, but just that excited energy when you know something big is about to happen. Because today's topic is a follow-up from a very explosive conversation that I had with my amazing wife, life partner, business partner, co-parent, Sarah Bivens, who happens to be sitting right across from me right now. How are you, Mama?
I'm awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for coming on the podcast again.
Heck yeah, man. This is exciting.
It is. So about 2 months ago, we recorded an episode where we talked about abundant love, which is our lifestyle, our love style. And we really dove into what abundant love is and explained how we've chosen to really co-create our relationship. And it was an awesome episode. What were some of the things that you remember from that episode?
I remember sitting on the couch and being a little nervous before we recorded. I definitely remember that. And just that kind of stomach turning, okay, here we go. And then we went into some sort of vortex. And I remember 2 hours later coming out of it wow.
Yeah. And it, what's the phrase? It bears mentioning? Is that a phrase?
Sure, let's go with that.
Yeah. That the reason why you and I felt nervous about that topic was because we had never talked openly about abundant love in a public forum.
Right.
And we had talked about it with, any family members? No family members at that point. A couple. But it was something that really stayed within our relationship with some of the partners that we have and all of that. But we hadn't really
put it out there.
Yeah, put it out there. So there was some nerves around that episode. And you mentioned it was a long one. It was well over an hour. And you guys, you listening, had so many questions.
Which is awesome,
yes.
I think.
And that's one of the things we wanted to do. We wanted to open up this conversation about love, about sex, about marriage, and present to you an alternative way to view the purpose of sex. That's really what abundant love is all about. And so in today's episode, what we're going to do is answer your questions. Like I said, you all had a lot. We had 40 some odd questions that were submitted through email and Instagram and things like that. And we're not going to go through all of them today, but you and I have gone through, Sarah, and sort of picked out the ones that were recurring, the things that we heard a few times. And then some of the ones that we think are really important to talk about. And so we're going to get into that, and we're going to read those and dive into them. It's fun. Sitting here right now, I'm not really entirely sure the direction of some of these answers are going to go in. But I think it's going to be a really powerful exercise to go through and talk about this stuff. Before we do, though, I want to sort of recap what abundant love is. Because, actually, by the way, if you haven't listened to the episode yet, you need to go and do that first. I highly, highly recommend you go back and listen to the episode on March 20th, and it's called Being an Abundant Lover, How I Create Healing, Empowering, and Joyful Relationships in and Outside of My Marriage. Go and listen to that episode so you can pause right here, go and listen to it, and then come back to this one, because it's going to give you so much context and understanding for really where these questions are coming from, because you'll get it when you listen. But as a refresher, because by now you've gone back and listened to the episode. So as a quick refresher, abundant love is really a way of looking at sex. I got so many of my concepts from sex, and Sarah, I want you to jump in on this too. I got so many of my ideas about what sex is for, what it looks like from middle school, from the health classes in middle school, from the incredibly immature conversations I had with kids around that time. And that was also the time when I was introduced to porn. And so porn came in and provided a lot of my contextualization around sex, around relationships, around masculinity, around what it looks like to be in that sort of pairing between two people. And that was really what was the foundation for me moving forward. And then I was introduced to the idea of abundant love. But before we dive into that, Sarah, where did your ideas on sex and, intimacy, where do they really come from?
Oh boy. The biggest sources would probably be the Catholic Church, because I was super Catholic. Yes, so I'll just say that.
Period.
Yes, there. And any conversations around that. So, church, Sunday school, school itself, because I went to a Catholic high school. Soap operas, that's where I saw the concept of what sex even was remotely about, because I would see my sisters and my mom watching soap operas. I'm 14 years younger than my sisters, who are about a year apart. So, big gap there. So the experiences my siblings were having were way, on different planes than where I was at. But seeing what they were interacting with, like soap operas, I just got this... I got a lot of programming there, and you can imagine, probably super dramatic and full of emotion. The teeny boppers of the day, Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, Mandy Moore, Jessica Simpson, who was big about being a virgin. And let's see. And those romantic comedies from like the early 2000s of high school kids exploring their sexualities and, wanting to lose their virginity or, all of that. So I think a combination of those things. And then I had a few friends who were a bit more advanced, I guess you could say, and were exploring certain things at ages that I was not and had no interest in. And I would hear these stories of, what they would be delving into. And I was like, ew. That sounds gross. Did he wash his hands first? Like, that's the kind of stuff I would be thinking.
Yeah.
And the construct I was coming from. So that's where a lot of my stuff came from. And what's fascinating, you said all of that, and then insert a bunch of years, a bunch of experiences later, Abundant Love gets introduced. The thing that I've found over the past year-ish, I would say, is that for the vast majority of us, those thoughts that get laid down then in those like 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 age range, some a little bit before and some a little bit later, there are outliers, but those things get laid down and a lot of times don't shift.
Yeah.
And we engage in more mature, elevated things later on. Like we move up as far as our behavior, but the energy and the emotionality mindset around it doesn't really advance all that much more, I've found. And so
that was the case for me.
Yeah. And so you're playing at this bigger level, you're playing in the big leagues, but you still have like a little league mindset about it. So
that's a great way to put it. Your body might be a big league body, it's developed and those hormones are racing, but the way you relate to yourself, the way you relate to other people and life within a sexual context had not evolved.
Yeah.
And that was the same for me.
Yeah.
And then, you and I, we get together and we begin our relationship, and we brought in those paradigms, that more traditional paradigm, the old paradigm we used to have of sex into the relationship. And, we were having sex and we considered ourselves healthy sexual people. Yet you and I privately were going through the ringer emotionally in our own ways because we didn't know any better. And so, for us, when we were introduced to people who had like a very different, it was an eye-opening way of looking at sex. And I was so fascinated because there was this part of me that, had looked at sex as it was for fun. It was for procreation, making babies. And you did it because you were supposed to. When you were in a relationship, like you're supposed to do that. And that was how I viewed sex. And so all of my sexual experiences fell into one of those three buckets in terms of the purpose. Right? And then I get into conversations with people who talk about sex being healing, who talk about being able to feel empowered through sexual energy and use that sexual energy and point it into different directions and use it for different things and use it for creation. And that sort of stuff blew my mind. And so fast forward now, where we are today is we consider ourselves abundant lovers. And abundant love is simply an alternative paradigm of sex, as a different way to look at sex and sexual energy, where in the past, sex was for those three things we mentioned: for fun, for making babies, and because you were supposed to, out of a sense of duty. But now the way that we view sex and our sexual selves is that we're creating these intimate sexual relationships to create ongoing healing in our lives. Healing emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically even. We view sex now as a way to feel and become empowered and to use that sexual energy to create things. And lastly, sex for us today is all about having that sustainable joy. How can we be in that orgasmic bliss state and stretch that out outside of the bedroom? And that for us has been a huge shift in the way that we view sex, like I've said, and that is abundant love. And we dive into that into the episode. So that's just, I'm giving you kind of a kind of a refresh on some of the concepts we get into in that episode. And I think now is a great time to kind of move into some of these questions.
Let's do it.
I imagine some new questions have been stoked in you listening right now. So we'll, this isn't in a real particular order. I think a couple of them I put after one another because they kind of flowed.
Yeah.
And yeah, these come from you. You submitted these questions. You emailed me. You hit me up on Instagram, and you wanted Sarah and I to talk about this stuff. So the very first question is, do you always share with each other when you've made intimate connections with other people? And so I guess we should mention that abundant love is this, this way of viewing sex. And you and I, Sarah, have chosen to bring in other people into our sexual experience. And so you have partners that you have all different types of sexual relationships with. And when I say all different types, what I mean is, some of the partners are sexual, like intercourse, and then some of them aren't. Same with me. And so I have partners as well. So this question is relating to that. Do you always share with each other when you've made intimate connections with other people? The simple answer is yes.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, absolutely. It's important for that communication and that openness and that transparency in all ways, because that is what we are seeking to create in this experience that we're in together. That may not be the case for other people and other types of love styles, or things like that, however you want to label yourself, polyamory, open.
We're going to get into that too. That's good to get into, so I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah. I don't know if this is jumping into that, but I've read things or seen examples of things of couples who subscribe to that but don't talk about their engagements, don't share when they're planning or when they do. And that works for some people, that's great. I don't think it works for me or for us. The whole out of sight, out of mind thing doesn't really do anything or add. And I am clear that by being fully open, honest, and transparent, while there may be some discomfort and some things to work through there, that minimizes any likelihood of victim sort of stuff, like you did this to me, or something were to be a consequence or a repercussion of an event, of a meetup that wasn't shared. Then that it plants funky seeds.
It's landmines, right? Like in a relationship, if you withhold things, a lot of times it comes back to bite you. And I know you listening can imagine that that's just magnified when you're introducing new people into the mix and different people into the mix.
Right.
So, for us, yes, we absolutely talk about when we've made an intimate connection, and there's sort of a process that we go through. So, if let's say that I'm wanting to connect with one of my partners, I'll share that intention with you, like, hey, I'm thinking of connecting with so and so, and we will actually like look at our schedules and see when works.
Yeah, because there's a practicality aspect to this in the sense that we are parents, we are entrepreneurs, we have lives, we have shit we're running and taking care of. So yeah, sometimes it's like pull out the Google calendars and sync them together and make sure that, I can take care of Maya or I can, whatever, so that the space can be created. So sometimes, it may not sound super sexy. It's not this like, that's where it's not like a 50 Shades of Grey, 9.5 weeks type of thing. It's like, it's part of our lifestyle. So yeah, there's a scheduling aspect to it. And something really funny I want to throw in there. A lot of times when you're about to set something up with one of your partners, there is a great chance and likelihood that she's actually reached out to me first. That tends to be protocol a lot of the time. And it's not a necessity that happens, but that just tends to be how it rolls, because I feel like the females especially like just are connected in that sort of way. And I also, if there were to be a clause to this question or answer, is that we all know every single person that we are interacting with, and they know each other as well. So there's no surprises in terms of like, oh, I just met this person and I'd like to go on a date with them. Like there's none of that here. And I think we'll get into a little bit of that more later. But this whole sharing, when we are planning to get together, it's with the complete understanding that these are all people we already know. And chances are I've been talking to them too.
So when it comes to talking with one another, when we've connected with somebody, yes, we do that. A lot of times Sarah knows beforehand. So, and I think one of the questions later on, actually, I break down. Yeah, cool. So one of the questions later on, I'm going to break down sort of like how the conversations go.
The
and how
step-by-step kind of thing? Okay.
And just to point out, like you mentioned the whole spontaneity thing and the 50 Shades and all of that. I've never seen 50 Shades. So I'm just assuming they like spontaneously have sex all over the restaurants and airplanes and stuff. There absolutely is that element. And the reason why that can exist for us is because we have such a high level of trust in one another. And because abundant love for us, like Sarah's mentioned, is a lifestyle. With that lifestyle, we've been very clear and intentional on what we want to create. With that clarity and intentions have come things like agreements between Sarah and I.
And understandings.
Guidelines for the type of people we interact with. Open communication, like Sarah already mentioned, between us and me and my partners and Sarah's partners. Like there's a whole freaking network of things going on, so that, hey, you want to be spontaneous? Cool. I already know that you're keeping to your guidelines and it's staying within our agreement, and that the trust has been built. So that allows for that sexy, spicy aspect to it.
Right.
This isn't stale. Like, all right, 9:30 p.m. Can I do it? Look at your calendar. Okay, is there available? All right, do we need? It's what I mean. Like, there's flow in all of this, and it's by our design. So
right. And with the understanding that when those impromptu, spontaneous flow type things do pop up, there's a conversation after and very shortly after.
Yeah.
And so that consistency and that practice adds to that trust that you mentioned.
Cool. I'm finding after answering this first question that like it's so easy to go down so many paths with this, because answering this leads me to think about this and think about that. So we'll flow to question number 2, and we'll see. Maybe we won't do as many tangents.
Or as we go along, you might come to a question like, oh, we actually kind of talked about this a little bit. So you just, wrap it up a little bit.
All right. Question number 2. I am totally curious if your family listened to your Abundant Love podcast. And if so, do they reach out to you? That's great. That's a great question. Because at the time that we recorded and published, we had not had conversations. Like our family didn't know. I think, Sarah, you might have had, like, one of your sisters might have known.
No, not at that point.
Oh, okay. None of your family knew. One of my sisters knew about our lifestyle and love style, but, the rest of them did not. So, did they listen? I don't think they listened. I don't think your family listened.
I can say with almost 100% certainty that my family has not listened. Also, that my family doesn't even really know
what podcasts
I don't think or what we even do. I don't think my family knows like what my profession actually is.
I think the same is with my family, that they did not listen, that they don't listen to the show. I don't get the sense that they listen to the show. They never commented on it. However, in the 2 months since we've published, we recognized that, you know what, we were withholding from our family, that we have had this love style for years, going on 3 years now, and it has been such a huge part of our growth and transformation and healing, and such a big reason for us being the people we are today. And they had no idea. And so we decided to have conversations with our family. And what it looked like was me calling up my mom and saying, "Hey, Mom, do you have a few minutes?" You calling up your mom was here. No, did you do it on the phone?
Phone.
Okay. You calling up your mom and you talking to your sisters. And since then, we've talked to almost all of our family members one-on-one to say, "Hey, listen, this is who we are, and this is what our lives look like." And, we didn't necessarily go into every single detail of everything, but we were honest with them, and we were transparent, and we opened up ourselves to, receive questions from them. And that has happened in the past 2 months since publishing the episode.
Yes, it has.
Yeah.
Do you want to share any aspects of that? It's been a mixed bag, mixed reviews, I would say.
Yeah. So, I was terrified. I was super scared. And it was really you who inspired me, because we had been talking about it, and I knew it was something I was going to do. I knew it was just a matter of time. And then on your way to train a client, I think you called your sister, and you just had that conversation. And when I heard you were calling your sister, I was like, all right, Matt, it's Band-Aid time. I'm ripping this Band-Aid off. So I called my dad and I called my mom back to back, boom, boom, and had the conversation with them. And, it felt great. But it was definitely scary, because I was afraid of being judged. I was afraid of them not accepting and then confronting me in some sort of way. I was afraid of just how they would react. And, long story short, my parents were cool. It was, they were cool.
Nice.
And then your experience quickly?
I wouldn't say as cool. Definitely some misunderstanding and questions. Great questions, in the scheme of, if those questions bother me or create things, then they're just opportunities for me to explore and, get with myself on, because I don't have to defend anything of who I am. All I'm doing is creating a space for us to have some more transparency and intimacy in our relationship, this being the person, whoever I'm sharing it with. And I see this extension of me putting myself out there to share this with you as trust in you and our relationship, that we can grow as a result of my sharing this. So just a lot of, don't really get it. Not the best idea. Unsafe. I think treacherous was a word used in there.
Yeah.
So it's a work in progress,
Yeah.
That's what I'd say there. I think it was a great cathartic thing for me. There was definitely a question at one point of why even tell us? Like, why?
Yeah.
We could have just gone on living our lives not knowing this.
Which
And
is
so my
fascinating.
question to that was, the question was, are you saying this is such a big a part of yourself that you couldn't stand another day basically without sharing this? And I'm like, pretty much.
Yeah.
And just not really getting that. So it's okay. It is what it is. And
I mean, in the moment it sucked.
oh, it sucked a little bit. Yeah.
The conversations we had for the next couple of days were just bummed that family was not as accepting. And, and I experienced this with some of my family as well, where they just don't want to know.
Yeah.
So the coolness that I experienced in some of my family was sort of, cool, thanks for telling me. I don't want to ask any questions. I don't want to know anymore. And, that's a hard thing to hear when you recognize that your parents don't want to know who you are, because it is confronting to them.
Yeah, that's what I think was challenging, and what was the kick in the pants about it was that sort of feeling, and that with everything you do know and understand of who I am and what my life is and how unbelievably blessed and joyful I am, and look at my marriage, look at my work that I do, look at my child, look at my health, this is a part of all of that. This has been an integral part of creating all of that. I'm not shooting up heroin and telling you that I'm happy as a result. So, but to some, that might be the same thing. It might be the equivalent of that.
Or it might be preferred only in that it's less confronting.
Yeah.
Because when you're talking about sex and intimacy and relationships, that is one of the most confronting things to people. So yeah, let me deal with a substance abuse issue because I don't want to deal with the sex issue because it makes me think about my own things.
Well, even then, I mean, they're not even comparable things because you said issue. Like it'd be one thing if I was saying I was, like I said, shooting up heroin. That's a thing to be solved and healed and worked through. Whereas I'm like, hey, this is a thing that actually works for me. This is something I need help on or something I need rehab on. So anyway, that I think that covers pretty well of the little bit of the family stuff and how, no, they haven't listened to it to our knowledge, but there have been some conversations. And I think that's just opened the door to more powerful and authentic conversations in the future, either with those same people or, to build up that strength to have future ones with new people.
Yeah. And having those conversations, we had them with the people we were most scared to have them with.
Yeah. It's like after that.
Exactly. It's like after that, I mean, talking to anybody else, it's cool because I faced that big fear in me of being judged and the reaction, everything that I said before. But really it was about you and I, Sarah, recognizing that we had been withholding and no longer wanting to withhold.
Right.
Because withholding the sharing meant that we were also withholding being our true selves and withholding our truest, most pure experience. And that just didn't vibe with us. And so we shared. Great question. Next question is, how do you find other partners? This person asks, I know Sarah talked about how it's not that we go through Tinder and swipe to meet like-minded people. So it'd be interesting to hear what a real-life example looks like for both of you. Do you approach connecting with others in the same ways or differently? That's cool.
Yes.
Yeah. I think for both of us, we have connected with like our secondary partners, and that's terminology that Sarah and I use, like in our
fancy lingo.
Yeah, like it just helps us, like Sarah and I are primaries to one another, and then secondaries are the people that we connect with in different ways. These were people that we already knew, we already trusted, we already loved, and you talked about in this question, attracting like-minded people. We had attracted those people into our lives well before we saw ourselves as abundant lovers, well before we had even entertained the idea of connecting with other folks.
Correct.
But there was something, like some form of us was attracted to these people because they were in a similar space, like mind frame, and they did end up becoming our secondary partners. So that's the best way to answer that question. I mean, how would you answer that question?
Yeah, I would say people who are already in our lives. So, and this isn't something, to another layer of answering this question, this isn't a thing we are actively pursuing and seeking out on a daily basis. Like I'm not going to the grocery store looking for any potential secondary partners. I'm not going outside of any of the circles we've created for that. It's not that type of thing.
Yeah, we aren't adding new people like, hey, I just met so-and-so at Target and I was really feeling
yeah,
her.
That's not an example of what happens.
Because of our guidelines,
right?
Because of the agreements that Sarah and I have made, which we'll get into, those things
take time to build up to.
Yeah. The type of people that we want to connect with, these are folks that we want to have multi-year long relationships with so that we can truly get to the essence of their character and see who they are and what they're all about. And and then when we're like, person is somebody that I want to experience healing, joy, and empowerment with.
Right. Yeah. So if someone new happened to enter the sphere like tomorrow, I mean, I'll speak for myself. Easily, we would be a year away from any sort of intimate sexual interaction. Yeah. Easily. So that gives you an idea of like, this is some real shit we're talking. Like, we're not just dicking around. Like, no, we're playing for real. And if like you want to be in my tribe and like a part of my life and my family, and like let's do life together in this unique way. This is real.
Yeah.
And
that's and you said let's do life together.
Yeah.
Like, and you mentioned lifestyle. Like, this is a lifestyle for us where, you know, we don't play around with sexual energy. Like, at this point, having the realizations and the understanding and the experiences that we've had, like, sexual energy is something that you and I hold in very high regard because of its power, you know, like, even if you don't connect with some of the ideas, I know that for me, a lot of times I don't connect with the vibration of the universe and stuff like that. Like, sexual energy is life energy. It's what creates life. You can wrap your mind around that and just and the raw power that happens when two people can come together to actually create life. So that same type of energy, I mean, it's something that we highly respect.
Yeah, agreed. So back to the people we've attracted, I think it's fascinating, and sometimes you just can't explain certain things on how the group of people we interact with assimilated, and then also at their own timelines and like in their own iterations came to understanding of who they were and their willingness and desire to practice this sort of love style as well. So we're talking, you know, some couples, some individuals, but yeah, they've been people that have already been in our lives. And also another thing you just can't explain sometimes, people who I would not have been physically attracted to right off the bat to begin with. And it's like through this process of understanding and peeling back the layers and coming to a new space of what sex and intimacy and love is, that you can be attracted to energy.
Yeah.
And not just that physical. Because I'll tell you right now, I don't think any of my partners right now off the bat, I would have been like, hey, what's going on?
That'd be funny when they listen to this and they're like, wait, for real?
Well, no, I can appreciate, there's a difference between being able to appreciate someone's aesthetics and being like physically sexually attracted to it on just that basis. But no, I can, you know, I think I've told them too. Like, I can honestly, accurately say that off first cuff, I wouldn't have been into any of them.
Yeah. You know, and for me, like, a lot of that has had to do with my emotions leading things.
Yeah.
And
or your peen.
Yeah. Yeah. And just being pulled by those emotions, and those emotions clouding some of my, I don't know the right phrasing, because when I look at something like energy, and I look at who a person is being, and I look at how they're showing up for themselves, and I look at their consistency and their integrity and their character, that trumps emotion to me. Mm-hmm. And so today I'm attracted to who a person is being and who they're becoming.
Yeah.
I am not as attracted in your physical state. You know, like, there are some things that I get out of somebody who's physically pleasing to my eye. I could say, wow, you know, this person feels that they are worthy of the exercise regimen that they've picked up, whatever, you know. But there's so many more layers to that, because there are so many people out there who are incredibly gorgeous and, you know, have all of those physical attributes, who internally loathe themselves, mm-hmm. and internally are very destructive against themselves, and there's a lot of judgment. That energy is brought into the bedroom. Mm-hmm. That energy is what then mixes with my energy when we engage sexually. So the physical stuff is so not as important to me. Mm-hmm. And it is not anywhere on our list of guidelines for creating partners.
No.
Is all about energy. It's all about who these people are for themselves, for other people in their lives, for life itself. It's all about how they're showing up. It's all about who they're being. Yeah. And that in and of itself has been a huge shift for me.
Oh yeah, it fucks up your old thinking, and
yeah,
you're like, damn it, why can't I just go? Sometimes, I'm not saying this is what I want, but sometimes in those moments you're like, damn it, why can't I go back to the days where I just like wanted a hunk of meat and you didn't have to be smart or funny or sweet or not. Like,
yeah.
you have to, that was easy. No, it's not easy. It's actually not the ideal way to be. But it's just funny how it messes with a bunch of the old stuff we're supposed to think and believe. Like, you're supposed to look nice, smell nice, drive a nice car, and do me good.
Yeah, and if you check off those boxes, then we are poised to have a healthy, thriving, intimate relationship.
Yeah.
And I mean, come on, think about that for yourself. Like the person who has the job that you say that you want, who looks the way that you want, that has the smell that you want, can cook dinner. Like if you found a person with those attributes, does that automatically mean that they're adding to your life force and energy and vitality? It's like, no, those are just surface level things. Like who is that person at their core? How do they view themselves? Like those ideas are so much more powerful. And, when you seek out partners who truly, I think, embody some of those values and some of those things and align with principle, that's where magic happens in the bedroom. That's where intense connection happens in the bedroom, when you have two people who are showing up for themselves, who then come together and recognize that, wow, we are co-creating this thing. So I'm going down a rabbit hole, but that all comes up for me when I think about who we connect with. It's important. All right. Next question. Did you take baby steps, physically and emotionally, to get to a fully open relationship, or did you dive right in?
That's such a great question.
Yeah. Baby steps, 100,000%.
Absolutely. I just mentioned that if someone new were to pop into the scene tomorrow, it'd be a year before anything. And that's just with each, individual connection and how those flow. But us together coming into our understanding of this for ourselves, and then collectively took time and took dipping a toe in. Oh, okay, taking it out. Nope, don't want to get in the pool. Like, okay, 1 foot. Okay, I'm gonna go hang out over here. It was a little bit like that for a few months.
For me, for longer, because the idea of being an abundant lover scared me. The idea of having other partners terrified the shit out of me for a lot of reasons. And this is another question that'll come up. Jealousy was huge for me. My jealousy was so deeply rooted in a codependent relationship, was so deeply rooted in seeking validation and love and acceptance and approval from another person. And my jealousy showed up all the time because I felt like if you were giving attention, time, energy, love to another person, there'd be less for me.
Sure.
Now that whole thing flies completely in the face of the idea of abundance. Completely in the face of it. That if you give to someone else, there's less for me. That is the opposite of abundance. And so that was one of the things I recognized. I recognized that my jealousy was coming exclusively from fear and scarcity. And that I, at my core, in my heart, truly believed in love and abundance. And so if this thing that's being presented, like these opportunities, if it's bringing up such strong feelings of jealousy and fear, then this was an area for me to step into to heal those feelings of jealousy and to heal that fear and to heal that scarcity. So it was baby steps, baby steps for a long time for me, because the idea of having sex with somebody was just unfathomable. Let me just go to kissing.
Right.
Let me just go to kissing another person. Let me just go to seeing Sarah kiss another person. Holy shit. My whole relationship world, my whole view of what marriage was, all of that shit got totally just blasted apart seeing you kiss someone for the first time. Oh my gosh. Okay. Actually, before that, seeing you hug somebody, like a deep, intimate, embrace, that made me terrified. And this is probably a good time to insert that we have different levels. Like there are different levels
of intimacy.
Of interaction. Will you share them?
Sure. So level 1 is kind of how you would interact with almost anyone you know off the street, or that's kind of like handshakes, hi, how are you, goodbyes. So
high fives, handshakes.
Yeah, what's up? So it might seem like, okay, that's why would you even have that as level? Just for understanding and for context, and in knowing where the playing field is and where we're at with our levels of standard and comfortability with whom we interact with, ourselves, and then who we are comfortable with each other interacting with. So that's your basic. All of you are interacting with tons of people at level
Yeah.
1. 2 kicks it up just a little bit in terms of like that big full embrace type of deal that you talked about, like a pop lip kiss, like just hi, what's up? So a little bit more. You wouldn't typically greet your granny that way type of.
Maybe like like in that like your tight embrace.
Yeah,
maybe like rubbing
like
on a person,
chakras
or,
aligned.
like,
type of deal.
And
Pelvic
maybe like is
touching,
like booty grabbing and stuff.
Yeah, like hands can roam a little bit
Yeah.
high.
So if you saw somebody embracing like that, you'd be like,
You'd probably think
there's
they were a
thing.
couple.
Yeah, like there's a thing between the two of them.
Right. So that sort of thing. Level 3 is I was gonna say fluid exchange, but that's
Fluid. So like peeing on people.
No, like saliva or the other stuff. So intense,
Like legit kissing.
Intense makeout,
Yeah, making out.
oral of
going down
any
on one
kind,
another. Yep.
and then 4 is the full Monty. So the intercourse is level 4.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that just helps us. Like it helps us to kind of know where we stand, and okay, in order for me to go to level 2 with somebody, what does that
who's
look
on
like?
the table for that?
Yeah.
Or, do those need check-ins or, that sort of thing?
Yeah, like do we need to have a conversation beforehand if I'm on level 2?
Right.
And for you and I, it's like 3 and 4, there's conversations that happen, there's intentions that are set, like, hey, this is what I'm intending, like this is what I'm looking to heal from this experience. This is what I want to create out of this experience. This is what I want to create for myself. Here's my intention for you. Here's my intention for the other person. Here's my intention for their partner. Like we go through all of that.
And I think you mentioned something to this extent earlier, that we are on different levels of engagement and intimacy with different partners. So
True.
I'm not at level 4 type of interaction with all of my partners.
Yeah.
Because we're just, we're building to that, or it's like, it's an ongoing thing. So it's, I felt like that was important to state that there are variations to the types of engagements we have with the types of people.
Yeah. And just because somebody like, me and my partner might be flowing at level 4 and we're open for lovemaking, it's like, somebody might do something or show up in a certain way that you're just like, you know what? I want to back off a little bit, because the energy that you're bringing to the mix right now, it's just, I'm not feeling it, or, vice versa. Maybe it's something that's going on in my life. So
let's get into integrity. Let's get some things aligned, and then we can proceed with what we're about. But that's where the accountability and the communication comes in and is so important, because you just stated very well the whole thing of how much we honor and hold in such high regard sexual energy, and how precious it is that when things are getting a little funky, out of whack, that needs to be looked at and rectified. Otherwise, it's going to have a huge ripple effect.
It ripples through all of
everyone. So, so it's important to have that check in, just like you would expect with just one partner, and that's the only person you're interacting with. Like, constantly checking in and make sure that the relationship is rolling at the level that you want it to, and is creating all the things that you want it to.
Yeah. And so this was like a big aside, because I was talking about the baby steps, and so I was terrified of being an abundant lover, because it meant me confronting so many of those things that had been forged in my youth and through porn and through my previous sexual relationships, all the things, like all the beliefs that I had about myself and sex and marriage, all of that stuff that was just like, it felt like it was chiseled in stone. It had the potential to all be blown up through abundant love. And that was scary for me. So baby steps, absolutely. Like, it took a long time to get to level 2 with people. And then progressing to level 3 felt just terrifying. And then progressing to level 4 was incredibly scary. And so there have been baby steps for both of us throughout this entire experience of getting to this lifestyle that we're in right now. And it's interesting, because as we're sort of describing all this stuff, and then there's levels, and there's communication, and there's intentions, I imagine that you listening and hearing that are like, this shit sounds complex as hell. It sounds exhausting. And the reason why Sarah and I can vibe at the level that we're at right now with it, and it is like, it's our lifestyle now, is because it took us years to get here. It took us years of going through breakdowns, of conversations, of having massive breakthroughs, of tears, of frustration, of jealousy, of amazing orgasmic bliss, of all of it. It took years of that to get to a space where, we've got these the partners that we've created, and we've got the lifestyle and love style we've created. So I get it if it seems crazy looking at it from the outside in, but just know that this has been in the making for a long, long, long time. All right, next question. Do you and Sarah tell each other every time you are with someone else? Cool. This goes back to the earlier question about, let me see, what was it? If we always share about the connections. Again, the answer is yes. And what I mentioned back then, what I teased, was breaking down like how the communication happens.
Cool.
Yeah. So where does it normally start?
How
Yeah,
does it flow?
If we're with somebody else, yeah. So, we're playing for full transparency and all of that. So when the idea of, let's say, you getting with one of your partners, you having a date with a partner comes, what happens?
It's usually me talking to that partner and establishing that's what we want to do. So that intention is set right off the bat, or with that conversation, either simultaneously or on the tail of it, I communicate to you and to their partner what that intention is. And so that's kind of how it kicks off, is just make sure everyone's clear that this is a thing that's going to be happening, even though it may not be 100% set on the calendar. It's like, put the bat signal out, like kind of like just letting you know this is happening.
Let's do something. This just came to me. Like, let's role play as if we're like having that conversation.
Okay.
So for example, I'm in a text message thread with like, I'm a text with one of my partners. And,
okay.
We're kind of like just chit chatting about life. I'm like, hey, what's up? How are you? How's your day flowing? And oh, cool. And hey, listen, it's been a little while since we've connected, so I wanted to try to set something up with you and hang out. I just want to be in your energy and just love on you. Like, what's your calendar look like? And she might go back and share the calendar, and I was like, all right, cool. So it looks like maybe Friday is open. All right, let me just double check. And so I'll say something like, Sarah, I'm looking to connect with so-and-so like Friday evening. Are you cool with that? Do you have anything going on?
Mm-hmm. And that's when I'd say, yeah, sure, totally. Absolutely. That's open. Or need to figure this out, but we can make it happen. I don't think there's ever been a blatant, like, no, that's not cool in terms of what the thing is. Maybe that night doesn't work, but it's like a scheduling thing that would prompt me to say like, can we do this instead? But I don't even think it's ever popped up to where I've been like, no.
Because if that stuff comes up,
then together with her.
Yeah, then we work on it. Like,
right. Because that's indicative of something then. If that is coming up. Yeah.
Like, there's something there. And so, I'm not going to have a partner that you're just like, hell no, you are not connecting with that chick, and, yada, yada, because we would talk about that, and we dig into like, all right, what's beneath that? So anyway, back to the role play. So now I know that Friday night is cool. It works for both of us. And so what I would do, and one of the guidelines that we have, is that we only connect with people we only go to like level 4, like lovemaking, with people who are in committed relationships. So people who have boyfriends, girlfriends, or are married.
Correct.
Like, that's just one of our standards.
Yep.
And so at this point, after Friday night works, then I'm going to send out like a group text and be like, hey, so-and-so and I are planning on connecting Friday night. And, just kind of like bring all 4 parties into the conversation. And then let's say it's Friday morning, Friday afternoon. At this point, what I want, like, I'm getting into that mindset of, oh, cool, I'm excited. I'm about to hang out with so-and-so. We're going to like grab a coffee, and then, it's going to be on and popping. So what we'll do is I'll set out a text, and I'll set intentions. I'll be like, you know what? Here's what I'm looking to experience, looking to get out of this experience. Right now, I'm playing for just really working on expressing how I feel in the moment, or I'm working on, really asking for what I want, or I'm working on truly serving, the goddess. And that's what I'm playing for. And I want to take the energy from tonight, and I want to, put it towards the podcast and really come out with some just badass, like super raw content. And that's how I want to, take from this experience. And for Sarah, I'm looking for just, continued healing and sisterhood for you and whatever it is, right? And I'm setting intentions for what I want to experience with all 4 people. And then Sarah, you would do the same.
Yeah, it's kind of just like putting out an order to the universe by
Yeah.
capitalizing and taking advantage of this energy that's being created. And if we believe in the ability to transmute energy and have it carry over and cross over into all aspects of our lives, it's like, hey, you're going to be in the presence of and in the creation of some high power shit here. So when you're doing that, keep in mind these things to visualize. Like, it's a powerful visualization tool and manifestation practice. So, and there are residual impact and effects to it that reach far beyond, just you as a person. It's like your primary partner and then to everything that you do by extension. So it's just a way of, putting in an order to the universe, like, hey, universe, this is going on today. And it's like when you meditate, you think about what you want to be, all of that's, or when you pray, or it's just very similar, honestly, in that respect. So each person typically shares, what's going on for them right now. And then, whatever sort of intentions or affirmations they want to hold for the rest of the group. And it's pretty beautiful. I mean,
yeah, it is a beautiful thing.
How many people get really powerful affirmations like that consistently, from people around them and around a thing, a connection that has so much potential for healing, joyful energy.
Totally. So I absolutely love that piece of it. And then, Friday night happens and I go and have my date and connection and it's great. And come home and either immediately after or maybe the next day, depending on just life, Sarah, you and I will have a conversation about it. Yeah, like a recap. And, I'll talk about what happened and you appreciate the play-by-play, kind of knowing like what went down. And so I'll share what went down. And we'll go into detail. It's like, there's no reason for me to withhold, and you'll ask questions where you want. And, we'll talk about like, what did we learn about ourselves in that experience? Because there's always learning about yourself to be done, to be had. We don't always do it. We don't always recognize it. But man, in every single sexual encounter, every sexual experience, you can learn something about yourself. And so we'll talk about that. Like, hey, this is what I learned and this is how I felt. And this is what came up for me, because shit comes up for you too. Like, man, in this moment, like I started thinking about, blah, blah, blah. Like I started to think about my performance and everything. And I got real in my head and this happened. And all of that is just learning opportunity. And because you and I are constantly looking to level up and sharpen our saws and just live into our personal mission statements, it's just a beautiful thing, an important thing to talk about what came up for us. So we do that. And then 9 times out of 10, what happens after one of us has had an abundant love experience?
We usually make love again.
Like powerfully.
Yeah.
Because there's just it's like unexplainable when, Sarah, you've been making those deposits on yourself and you've loved on yourself and you've, really repped your self-worth by being with someone else who truly honors you, and you've done all that. That shit just lights me up. And I find you so incredibly attractive in those moments, like because of who you're being, right? And so 90% of the time, you and I are like, it's on and popping in big ways afterwards. And I'll tell you, especially fellas listening, I'll tell you that shit made no sense to me. Made zero fucking sense to me when all of this first started. And even today, it does not make logical sense. I cannot compute the fact that I get so much fulfillment and excitement around Sarah connecting with other people, being loved on, loving on other men. Like, it's the truth. Like, that energy, I can't deny that energy. And that was such a huge part of the fear and all the shit that was coming up for me over the years that we built to this, because I wanted to make sense of it and I couldn't. And once I stopped trying to, once I surrendered to it, like, everything changed for me. Yeah. So
that's cool. That was really well said.
Tangents galore in this conversation. I love it. All right, next question. How is this different from swinging or being polyamorous?
Oh, yeah. I didn't know that question was in there. How is it different? Well, I think the biggest thing is that abundant love is really a mindset.
Yeah.
And you can be an abundant lover. I think we mentioned this earlier in any of those constructs. You can be of the space of abundant love and be polyamorous and be a swinger and be monogamous.
Yeah, because abundant love is all about, again, I'll say it again, it's all about creating intimate sexual relationships with people for the purpose of healing, empowerment, and joy. You can have intimate sexual relationships with yourself and still hold that purpose and that intention, right? So you can be an abundant lover and be single, be in a monogamous boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, monogamous marriage, be polyamorous, be swinging, be in a heterosexual, homosexual relationship. It doesn't matter because abundant love is truly a mindset. It's a way of looking at sex.
Right. It doesn't put you in a box.
Does not put you in a box. And that's the most beautiful thing about it to me.
So we don't like boxes.
No, because what happens when you create walls around people? They push against them. They try to get out of them. And they try all sorts of ways. I know when I was in a monogamous relationship with somebody and there was walls around it that I put up because I felt like I needed to, I tried all sorts of ways to push against those walls. I was very secretive with my porn and watching it this and I remember like sitting and watching TV and I wasn't looking at porn, but I was on the computer looking at like a website forum I used to go to, and there was a post about hot chicks with big butts or something. And I wanted to look at it while she was right there because I wanted to push against the walls of that relationship. You know what I mean? So yeah, abundant love is so different because it's a mindset.
Well done.
Cool. Next question. Don't you get jealous, and how do you deal with that?
Talked about that a little.
Yeah, don't you get jealous, Sarah?
I mean, I guess yes. I wouldn't always have classified it like that, and I never thought myself to be a jealous person. And so I think it's just been interesting how we've shifted dynamics and like how things have swung back and forth over the years of our growth in this. At any given point in time, you could argue that one of us was moving a little bit more powerfully than the other in it, just in general. So yeah, some things of jealousy that have popped up for me have been around time, time scarcity, because of the way our lives are, to go just off and spend 4 hours with someone or however long. It's like, we don't always get that. Like, you and me don't always get that. Or like with the way that our lives are run with having a kid and everything. So sometimes there's some time scarcity or just like energy, or a little bit of FOMO, fear of missing out. Like, what are they talking about? What are they doing? Or, some of that might come up every once in a while. And very, small little blips. One thing that I would say popped up that took a little bit more energy to kind of move through was this feeling of, and I guess it's a strain of jealousy, but what it really comes from is my own shit and needing to deal with my own like worthiness conversation. But that you would experience something sexual with someone else that you weren't experiencing with me, but that's not where it would bother me. It's that you got to experience it with someone else, and then as a result of experiencing it with someone else, were let down in some way that you weren't able to experience that thing in exactly the same way with that person with me. That's where I was like, fuck.
So like a certain position or certain whatever.
Yeah, that's something that, someone likes a lot that you happen to like a lot too. And then when the two of you are together, it's like, this, and you wanting to recreate that with me, and me not being able to is like the conversation in my head. And that's not the abundant way of looking at it, that you can have it all, that you can experience certain things with certain people in that very unique way, in the way that only you and that person can do that. And that with me, you've chosen me for a reason, and we are primary partners for a reason. And what we create together is unique, in and of itself. So just coming back to all of that, has been helpful when that bug wants to creep in.
Yeah, and that's a hell of a bug. It's like, I talked about this on a couple episodes ago. You know, I wanted my partners to fulfill me in every way before this, before
past,
what
yeah.
we've created. Yeah. I wanted my partner, like whoever I was with, my girlfriend at the time, for example, to love every position that I wanted to get into, to love every level of vigor, of speed, of intensity, and to be open to all of it. And like, that's what I wanted, right? And so when I didn't have that, frustration set in, and this and that, all sorts of different things. And so going back to what you talked about with some of the jealousy stuff, it's like, in this new abundant mentality that we have, I don't have to be everything for you, and vice versa. Like, you don't have to be every single thing for me. You know, you don't have to, and that's a huge weight off of one another, because you don't have this expectation that, you know, you are going to fulfill me in every single way, because that's just not realistic. I don't believe it is. So I'll speak about my jealousy. I've talked a little bit about it. Tons and tons of jealousy for me. And early on, I recognized that my jealousy was a huge opportunity for healing, that my jealousy was indicative of my views about myself. It was my challenges with self-worth, my challenges with my confidence. My jealousy was really rooted in a lot of stuff. So even though I felt jealous and it made things very hard, I always was like, I can get over this jealousy. I can get over it. I don't have to be a jealous person. And it was that belief that I didn't have to be a jealous person that really kept me in the game, because otherwise I probably would just been like, fuck it. This is not, I draw the line at this, because I am not willing to confront this feeling I have about this, you know, you leaving me. Right? Like, if I dug down a little bit, it was about you leaving me. I'm too afraid of you leaving me to even entertain any of this stuff. So, you know, the jealousy cropped up in all sorts of ways, in all of the different levels. And there's still pangs of it today. I don't know if it'll ever go away, but I'm able to look at it differently today than I did when we first began. Jealousy was a big thing that messed up my relationships in the past, you know? So that was it. Next question. What impact has this had on your primary relationships? So what impact has being an abundant lover had on primary relationships? When I was preparing for this with you, read this question, I thought, ooh, this is great. Let's look at what we wrote down in our agreement, because we put together an agreement document that talked about, like, you know, what do we want to get out of our primary relationship? What do we want to get out of our secondary relationship? What are the standards? Like, in order for us to interact with people, you know, we want them to be this type of thing or whatever. And so I thought it'd be cool to read what we wrote down for the purpose for secondary relationship to answer this question. Because this is exactly the impact that it's had.
Right.
So why don't you go with the first few, and then I'll do the last few.
Okay. Purpose for our secondary relationship. It's to create new avenues of healing, to bring powerful, fun, loving energy back to our primary relationship, to create more intimate and empowering relationships that support us in understanding ourselves as individuals and as a couple.
That's awesome. And that is those are just some of the things, and that really describes what we get out of being abundant lovers.
Yeah.
So the rest of them, to learn new ways in which we can open up, receive, and give and manifest, to continue to live into our respective titles of humble badass for you, Sarah, and beast mode for me. Those are titles that we've given ourselves. Like, you know, Sarah's playing to be a humble badass, and I'm playing to be in my state of beast mode consistently. To constantly be learning anew about ourselves, love, intimacy, what marriage is, what it means to be in a primary relationship, and abundance. Not thinking we know it all, choosing to create our own path and truth rather than following blindly what's been handed to us. And finally, the purpose of, you know, these secondary relationships is to foster an intimate and loving community for us to live in, to raise our family in, and to influence. So those are all of the things that we said we wanted to get out of abundant love, and those are all the things that we've gotten out of it. I think that's a perfect way to answer that question. All right, we have a few more. How do we go? So this person asks, "Oh, this is great. This shows this person is curious. How would I go about integrating abundant love into my life?"
Go for it. You do it.
Cool. Well, I mean, abundant love is a mindset. So really, the first thing I think is just wearing on, like, what does it feel like to adopt that mindset? Mindsets and beliefs, they're like clothing. You can just wear it on for a little while, walk around in it, see how you feel, and then take it off if it doesn't serve you. So I think integrating this into your life is really just taking a look at that mindset, looking and recognizing, have your sexual experiences in the past been dropped into the buckets of fun, duty, and procreation? Have you looked at intimate sexual relationships as healing? Do you see where you can heal, your old beliefs about yourself, your beliefs about other people, your beliefs about life and about marriage? Do you see that possibility? Do you see where, your sexual intimate relationships can be empowering? How you can take that energy that's cultivated, that powerful life generating energy, and not just experience it and be in that state, but then use it, right? Funnel it, leave a sexual experience and go and now dive into your business, right? And go and create your artwork, or go and love on your family in an intense way. Like, whatever it is, buying into the idea that you can do that with that energy. And then understanding that, like, when we're in these beautiful sexual experiences and we're experiencing that orgasmic joy, right? And that levity that we all oftentimes feel, and that bliss and that sense of freedom and that sense of vulnerability that's so powerful, and that excitement, that right there, that state can be sustained, can be had. Like, you can feel aspects of that. Maybe you're not walking around with a buzzing orgasm all day long, but you can feel some of those vibes outside of the bedroom. So I think it really is about examining yourself in your intimate sexual experiences, examining how you've shown up in the past and how you're showing up today, and then seeing, does it work for you? Are you being fulfilled in the ways you want to be fulfilled? Do you know how you would like to be fulfilled? Are you doing things because that's what you were told however many years ago? Or is there room for a different belief to be worn on about what sex can mean for you and what that intimacy can mean for you?
Very well said, Mr. Bivens.
How would you answer?
I have nothing to add to that, literally. I mean, yeah, there's no point.
You can do this next one then. Next question is, and we have two more. This is question number 10. How does abundant love heal?
Ooh. Well, I can say for myself, what abundant love has provided avenues for is going back to that teenage self, that preteen self of me, and recoding, rescripting what those first beliefs were that were laid down, and the ones that kept me in a disempowered, victim-like, scared, shameful space of sex. And just through practicing the statement of sex being healing, sex being for empowerment, and sex being for joy, just by doing that, like literally saying it or writing it down, repeating that over and over, creates a new pattern, creates a new possibility. And so you don't, before even getting into any of the physical intimacy of it, just by having those conversations around what its possibility is and what the energetic implications of it are is healing just off the bat.
Yeah, I think that's huge.
Yeah. And every single interaction, whether it's a conversation to a physical engagement, is just an opportunity for me to connect with myself more. And as a result, go out and be the badass mother that I am, like
Yeah.
mother in all ways, not just mother, but badass mother. Uh,
Like Sam Jackson would say it.
exactly. Totally. So that's how it's been healing for me.
Yeah, mine's a lot of the same, like I had so many disempowering ideas around sex for so long, and I didn't know any better. I had never been introduced to any different way of looking at it. I just picked up what I had seen, I picked up what I watched, and I just wore it on. And it did, it wasn't all unhealthy, but boy, the things that were unhealthy impacted my self-esteem, impacted my body image, impacted what I believed I was capable of. And that rippled through the rest of my life, like with school, with career, with just so many things. It's just fascinating how many things, like when we get into those intimate relationships, like when we get into the bedroom, we strip down physically, right? And there's a level of vulnerability by being naked. But there's such a deeper level of vulnerability that we can go into by truly bearing ourselves. By truly saying, you know what? This is me and all my shit. I'm bringing it right now. And when we do that, and when you're open to that idea and you can look at that stuff, and even if you're afraid of it, and even if it's really confronting, you still are okay with shining some light on it. You begin to heal simply by shining a light on those areas that are damaged, or those areas that are weak, or those areas that are whatever. Like, you begin to heal them simply by acknowledging them and shining a light. And I don't know of a more powerful setting to practice that level of vulnerability than in the bedroom. That's where my healing has come from, by showing up and being totally vulnerable, not just because I'm standing there nude, but because I'm bearing myself fully in those moments. And the person that I'm across from, whether it's you, Sarah, or whether it's somebody else, like, they know that about me, and they know that I'm bringing my full, true self to the mix. And they know that when we combine our energies together, like, I'm bringing me. And that has been so healing, because if I want to show up fully in that experience, then I gotta look at the stuff that's preventing me from showing up fully. That's preventing me from being my most badass self. Because for so many years, I was bringing myself to the equation, and it was not my greatest self. It was my judgmental self. It was my fearful self. It was my scarce self. It was my fill in the blank.
Right.
And all I was doing was adding those ingredients into the soup that I was making with my partner at the time. And so, yeah, sex wasn't what it could have been for us, because I was bringing all that stuff. So that's how abundant love can heal, by adopting that mindset that Sarah said, and stepping into every sexual experience with that mindset. There's so much potential for healing. It's unbelievable. All right. So, is this the last one? This is the last question. And I think this is probably one of the biggest questions. Yeah, I think it is. Here it is. If you feel the need to do this, then you either don't really love the person you are with, or you don't need to be married or in a relationship. So why get married if you want to have this kind of lifestyle? Whew. Right? Like, why get married? If you want to be with other people, then why even get married? I get it.
Yeah, it's a totally valid question. Our answer is...
What's your answer? Like, give your answer, because I'm going to give my, yeah.
Okay.
I'm nodding, yeah.
Okay.
Because it's different for both of us, I think.
Okay, yep. Why get married? Because I want to. Because I want to be married. There's a lot of benefits I receive from being married, not just legally, but
yeah, not just tax benefits.
that's all I'm in it for. There what do I want to say? Marriage
Marriage is
marriage is what brings us together. Is whatever you make it, is what I've found. The biggest lessons about marriage so far in this for me is that marriage is not one definition, and the dynamics of one's relationship, all the way up to marriage and everything in between, is whatever your agreement is. And we came into this agreement with the understanding that that's what we wanted to create. We wanted to get married. We wanted to have babies. We wanted to, have a home together. And this was before we came into the understanding of being abundant lovers. So I can't say with 100% certainty in hypothetical land what it would look like if we came into the understanding of abundant love and were practicing it before we were married. I think I would still want to get married.
Absolutely. Because let's go back up and read, like, what was the purpose for this stuff for us? It was to create healing, is to bring powerful, fun-loving energy back to our primary relationship and bring it back to our marriage. So
right.
I could say with zero doubt that, boy, we would be married even if abundant love was something we dove into before. That's how I feel.
Yeah. And that one of the biggest things I've experienced in this whole thing has been that loop back, that I refer to it as that loop back effect, and how it comes back to us. It bolsters us, supports us, empowers us, like in all ways, and just inspires us to reach new levels of intimacy with ourselves and then with each other. So with all of that, I mean, because I want to be. And you could have this lifestyle and not be married, and that's fine. I mean, it's whatever your agreement is and what you want to experience.
Yeah.
So marriage happens to be an experience I was and am interested in.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And for me, it's like, why get married? Because we can have it all. Because we can have an amazing, powerful, completely synergistic and synced up marriage, and have people that we connect with regularly that add back to our partnership.
Yeah.
Because we can, and that is a beautiful thing, right? Like you really summed it up nicely, that marriage is what you want to make it. Marriage is a type of, it's a stage in a relationship that some people want to experience and others don't. And the same way that you get to create whatever type of relationship you want, you get to create whatever type of marriage you want. And so, I think it's like, when I think of marriage is my commitment to build a life with you, Sarah, to have kids with you. I'm not interested in having kids with any of my secondaries.
Nor am I.
I'm not interested in building, a life and going on my path, walking along my path with any of my other secondaries. I'm only interested in that with you. And so marriage is just one of the wrappings around our relationship.
Yeah, it's like, you're my king, I'm your queen, and then we have our court.
Yeah. We totally refer to ourselves as king and queen, and we have those people who see us as the king and queen of our relationship, of our marriage, and they support that. And that's such a beautiful thing. You know what I mean? And we do the same for them. For those people that we engage with, who are in those relationships. It's like, man, I love both of you in your relationship, and I want nothing but the absolute best. And I want to show up for you for that relationship, and honor all of that stuff. And we've created it, and we use language like that, like created and intention and stuff like that. But it was something that you and I recognized we wanted, right? Like,
clearly, because we attracted it, and
yeah,
here we are. So it's, you get to choose from there what you're going to do, who you're going to be.
Yeah, and just going back to this idea of having it all, you know what I mean, and not needing to stifle ourselves, not needing to silo ourselves. And we do that in our life experience, right? Like we are so comfortable with us fully expressing ourselves and being fully fulfilled that when it comes to the type of relationship we want, we don't need to stifle it. We don't need to say, well, that type of relationship is not for us because of what we're doing. It's like, no, we can experience marriage and be married and have all those amazing aspects of marriage, wear the rings, you know what I mean? And have everything else as well.
Here's something I'm going to throw in there. I don't think we directly mentioned it, but if I were to be a listener, how many partners do each of you have?
Oh yeah, we didn't talk about
I
that.
don't think we did.
All right. Oh, excuse me. I got the hiccups. How many partners? Let's see. I'll count.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
hold
you
on.
count. I have 3.
17.
Shut up.
20,
You're ridiculous.
20.
Yeah, because that's valid, though, because someone's probably wondering, like,
Yeah.
okay, so how many people we're talking about here?
5.
Like, okay. You have 5, I have 3.
And so on any regular basis, I might interact with one of the 5, once a week, and just sort of kind of go through I guess not a rotation, but it's not like a Rolodex or a little spinning wheel.
Imagine if we had like a slot machine type of
Oh, gosh.
device.
Yeah, like in our kitchen, it's like, all right, who are we going with this week?
Oh, God.
Like Price is Right style.
Oh.
Gosh. And maybe there'd be like 3 or 4 pictures on one little square. I'm like, come on, 5 some. Someone was thinking of that question too. Do everybody interact and engage together? Sometimes.
Depends.
Yeah, it depends on the person or the couple and what we want. But can you think of any other questions like that? So, how many people are we talking? Is there crossover? Is there cross-pollination?
What does that even mean?
Oh, no, I guess the pollination question probably people think about pregnancy. Okay, so let's talk about that.
Okay.
Like pregnancy and
Well, we just established that that's not what we're playing
disease
for.
and stuff like that. Yeah.
No pregnancy. That comes with high communication and practice of body and mind and cycle tracking.
Yeah, definitely the cycle tracking goes in there. For me, there's been a lot of just self-practice, ejaculation control, things like that. And yeah, I mean that's of course that's something that comes up with all this. I mean, when you're dating people, like let's say you're dating people and you aren't in a serious monogamous dating relationship, those same types of questions come up around pregnancy, around disease, and for us, it goes back to communication. Communicating and everybody being open and there being a high level of trust and transparency amongst everyone about sexual history, about what's going on with their bodies physically, about just any potential of that stuff. And that's hasn't always been easy because just talking about that stuff or just asking somebody, it's an awkward thing. Like, do you have any diseases? Do you know what I mean? Like, I've never just blatantly said that to a person, but I've had those conversations with my secondaries, and I know you have as well with yours. So just communication on all of those fronts.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all of our questions that you all have submitted.
For now.
For now, right? Anything else come up for you? Can you think of anything?
Not at this moment.
Cool. I mean, this has been awesome.
This has been pretty comprehensive, I would say.
Yeah. And it's cool because, we knew what questions we were going to answer. For some of them, there was a little bit of prep, but for a lot of it, I didn't really know how we were going to flow with it. And so there was tangents galore, and it's great. Just kind of like, all right, we got to unpack this stuff because this is about sex. This is about intimacy. Like, this stuff is deep. No pun intended.
Yes.
How are you doing?
I'm awesome. This
Yeah.
has been, been in it for a while. I'm, like, my legs are cramped up and stuff. I need a water break. I need someone to come pat me down
I
and
know, right?
massage my shoulders.
Cool. Well, if you have any other questions, reach out, go to the website, havingitallpodcast.com, and, get in touch, share your questions, because I'm happy to answer them. whether it's just in an email exchange or whether it's an actual other episode or something. But this stuff comes up, questions come up, because when we're talking about new paradigms of love and intimacy and sex, I mean, shit comes up. So Sarah and I are, we're not saying we're experts in any of this stuff. We've put in a lot of years of very, very intentional, very confronting, very intense work on ourselves to get to this place we are now. But we also recognize that, we're relative babies and everything. Like, it's an ongoing journey and process. So we're open to new levels of understanding. We're open to answering more questions and getting into future conversations.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I've talked about it on my show as well. I did a solo episode of, my perspective of the experience on the Balance of Motherhood podcast, which I know some listeners, jumped over to after hearing us talk and were like, oh, I want to hear, that perspective. And wouldn't you know, it's one of my most popular episodes.
I think it's the most popular. Yeah. So if you're interested in hearing exclusively Sarah's perspective, and you go into detail on, I think, a few other things, then go listen. It's Balance and Motherhood Podcast, and you can find it on your website, sarahbivens.com. You can find the links to that podcast, and I don't remember the title of it. Is it
How Being an Abundant Lover Makes Me a Better Mother?
Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So go check that out, get in touch with us, and thanks for hanging out. This has been beautiful. It's been awesome. And Sarah and I truly appreciate you. And Sarah, I'm very grateful to you for coming on another episode.
Oh, absolutely, love. Thank you.
Awesome. My name is Matthew Bivens, and that is Sarah Bivens. And here is to you having it all. Quick note about the Having It All podcast. I am not a doctor nor a licensed therapist. I'm a guy with a story and a passion for conscious conversation. My thoughts, opinions, and beliefs are my own. So please consult with your doctor or healthcare provider regarding any questions or issues you have related to your personal, physical, or mental health.